Motion, is there a second?
Second.
Discussion? All in favor? Motion passes. Before we get into the new business planning, I would like to just take a moment. I did not do this in our regular scheduled meeting on the 6th, and it is a proclamation for Dr. Laura Johnson, our former planning board member. Dr. Laura Johnson, January 23rd, 1939 to December 11th, 2024. Whereas on September 30th, 1932, Laura Jean Johnson was born in Zebulon to Hattie Mae Bostic and Monroe Jones. Whereas her family moved to New Jersey, and she was raised by her stepfather, Henry Odell, and her mother. Whereas she married Wesley Johnson and had 6 children, Jeanette, Robert, David, Wesley, Lorenzo, and Michael. Whereas Laura was passionate about her faith, education, and her service to her community. And whereas education was a lifelong passion for Dr. Johnson, she received a diploma in Christian education, certifications in theology, studies, Christian education, and a doctorate in ministry in 2007. Whereas her education reflects her passion for ministry, where she taught Sunday school and was a deaconess and was an ordained minister and an associate pastor at Zebulon First Baptist Church. Whereas Laura Johnson shared her passion for learning by encouraging others to excel and founded the Academic Achievers Program that celebrated the success of students at Zebulon First Baptist Church by rewarding those achievers with savings bonds. And whereas Laura served the community by working for AT&T, preparing taxes, owning her own business in downtown Zebulon, and serving as a member of the Zebulon Planning Board for 19 years, and the Board of Adjustments for 4 years. Now, therefore, I, Glenn L. York, Mayor of Zebulon, North Carolina, do hereby recognize Dr. Laura Johnson for her pursuit of knowledge, her encouragement to the youth, her service to the community, and for teaching God's word. Dr. Johnson will be missed by the Zebulon community and her family. This was signed on December 18th, 2024, Mayor Glenn L. York. Thank you.
Thank you.
Planning.
Good evening, Commissioners, Board of Commissioners and Planning Commissioners. Today is a joint public hearing for a text amendment for regional mixed use. Just a reminder that the process for tonight follows the process that the town has followed for joint public hearing. There is no applicant, staff is the applicant, but the rest of the process will remain as standard. Another reminder that when we're reviewing text amendments, the UDO provides a list of standards in which your review should be based upon. We can go into more detail about these through the conversation as necessary. The objective today is to review the requested UDO update and create a new zoning district called regional mixed use. And I think it's important to show a little bit of context about how staff got to where we are now in recommending this change to the zoning districts. The town of Zebulon, in the past 5 years, has grown 82%. So in 2020, population was a little under 7,000. And I would guess by the end of the year, we'll be over 13,000. Within our development system, we have 2,295 entitled lots. So these are 2,000 homes that will be built. And within the entitlement process now, there's an additional 1,600 units. These are both single-family homes, attached homes, and then also apartments. And that's an additional 6,600 people. So this 82% growth we've experienced in the past 5 years, it's going to happen again, 82% again. The other thing to show is that we have a lot of developable open space in our future growth area. Now, this doesn't mean that all of this will or should be developed, but what it does mean is the potential is there, and we should acknowledge that and think about how do we plan for these large open spaces. Land that's currently agricultural is a little under 8,000 acres, and vacant land's a little under 2,000 acres. And when you're a planner in Wake County, you talk a lot about growth, you talk a lot about accommodating for large housing developments, but cities themselves are not growth machines. And our comprehensive plan is clear that not only should we consider community growth, but we also should consider community character and consider choice. So this is a picture from the comprehensive plan that shows the variety of types of characters that the town of Zebulon should plan for, not only within our existing corporate boundaries, but within that entire future growth area. And so as staff was evaluating what tools do we need to put into the toolbox in order to achieve this spectrum of choice and community character, we were working on a couple different text amendments that we think will help ensure that we can implement the comprehensive plan as intended. So throughout the course of the year, we intend to present 4 text amendments. And today is the first one. It's called regional mixed use. There's 3 other ones. Just to talk very briefly about them. We plan to present some anticipated changes to the R1 district in order to better accommodate rural subdivisions upon the fringes of the community. We believe that by making our signage section more content neutral, we can be more fair and equitable in how we enforce the sign ordinance. And then also, as other communities in Wake County are making updates to their planned unit development language and process, we would ask the commissions to look at that as well. But let's talk about regional mixed use. And so I thought it was important also to show a couple examples of what do we mean by regional mixed use, because it means a variety of different things. This is one example. This is in Newport News. And this is some of you who may have been involved in urban planning. This is what you might consider a classic mixed-use development. It's pretty urban. It has apartments, it has offices, it has retail. In the right-hand side of the screen there is a movie theater, and it's got public space. Regional mixed use can create its own destination like this. Regional mixed use can also enhance an existing one. So this is probably the most famous sports mixed use development right now. This is Titletown in Green Bay, and obviously is enhancing the fan experience at Lambeau Field, but then also there's apartments and homes and additional retail and shopping that's open year-round. But it doesn't necessarily have to be urban in character, and regional mixed use doesn't necessarily have to go along with an NFL stadium. In Lynchburg, Virginia, there's a regional mixed use example that's very suburban in nature. So these are 1 to 3 story buildings. There's a housing component to this. And then also in the foreground here is a retirement community as well that serves as an anchor. So regional mixed use can mean a variety of things, but the product, there's similarities between the different examples in the product. None of what you just see is permissible in the town of Zebulon by right. And what that means is that if you were to pursue anything beyond, so our UDO does support vertical mixed use, but if you were to pursue any type of cohesive development that incorporates vertical mixed use, you'd have to go through the plan development process. And so while I think that the work that has been done in the past here does an excellent job in growth management, it does an excellent job in directing development to its highest and best places, there's a couple next steps that we can take together to ensure that Zebulon remains competitive in the next 5-10 years. It's important to point out that several other communities have already done this. So Morrisville, Clayton, and Burlington all have a by right mixed use, regional mixed use development zoning code or zoning district in process. Why should we care? This is a question we get a lot in the planning office. Why? Why are you doing this? Well, I think that there's a range of benefits to considering and implementing a regional mixed use by right district. One of them is a benefit to the residential property taxpayer. Because regional mixed use is typically high value per acre, it's one of the most fiscally productive types of commercial development that exist in the United States. And over time, it will create a more sustained balance in the property tax and provide some potential relief to residents down the road. There's a benefit to investors as well. Investors want clear and simple standards, and they want a clear process. And so by creating a mixed-use district that is a clear path to approval, we've created a predictable investment environment and created a community that I think would be attractive to developers that have lots of choices. The other thing is that as planners, we often think a lot about housing, we think a lot about developers, but we also need to think about the families that we actually work for. And a by right mixed-use district means a lot to a family on a Saturday afternoon. I don't mean to compare or say that this is what the type of mixed-use district that we need in Zebulon, but one example could be Fenton Village in Cary, where families go in the afternoon. It's an interesting place. It's an interesting development. It enhances quality of life. And a fourth group that I think benefits from a by right mixed-use district is the municipality. Right now, we do not by right allow for our most fiscally productive type of development. By allowing for this, it just simply makes the town more competitive, and we can bring high-impact projects to the market sooner. So what is the regional mixed-use district? So in your packet or online, you can find the text that we're asking to amend the UDO. But generally, in summary, it looks just like any of the other districts do within the UDO. There's a dimensional standards table. There's a master plan requirement. There's some straightforward design standards, including the expectation that a regional mixed-use project will meet our existing standards. These are existing standards that the town boards in the past have already approved and implemented into the UDO. And there's an updated table for permitted uses that excludes uses that are unaligned with regional mixed-use development. It's also, I think, important to point out that the master plan requirement, the way that the text is currently written, follows along with the zoning approvals. And so as the commissions look at the master plan, or look at the rezoning, evaluating the master plan is a component of this. So there's still a elected official or an appointed official process and influence on these high impact developments, as it should be because they are such high impact. So should you choose to follow through and adopt a by right regional mixed-use district, there's a couple outcomes that I think we can all expect. One is that we provide a clear pathway for some of the highest and best use developments that exist in the market today. We create a predictable investment environment, which provides clear expectations both to the investor and to the regulators and to the staff on how we should manage those applications. A streamlined process that promotes the economic competitiveness of Zebulon. And it also is a demonstration that we together continue to be aligned with the public objectives and orient development towards the goals and the policies of the comprehensive plan. And so the next step, this is my first joint public hearing, so Kate's not here, but I have to thank her for coaching me through how we traditionally do things here. The next step is questions from the Board of Commissioners.
Questions, comments from the board? Commissioner Baxter.
So can you explain a little bit more how we are going to interpret the term substantially when you use it in, say, the following sentence, which is somewhere in the verbiage that was sent to us online, substantially conform to the master plan. How are we going to gauge what substantially kind of denotes?
Because the comprehensive plan is a policy document and has a qualitative component in nature, so the term substantially means that we could rationally relate the action to a statement or to a policy within the comprehensive plan.
Okay, okay. And then when can we anticipate identifying areas on our TLU plan, our transportation and land use plan, that might kind of fall into a new regional mixed-use zoning district?
So that would be the next step.
Okay.
And so one of the reasons we haven't done that yet is because there's a variety of directions that the commissions could take this plan, or take this district. And so depending on, let's say just an example, depending on, so the final product has a density requirement. Well, depending on what that density is, drastically changes where that could be. And so the first step here is to have the public hearing to talk about this. And then once we know what we're going to implement, that's the next step, for sure.
Okay.
Yep.
And then finally, with regional mixed use, one of the things that I have seen a lot when I look at regional mixed-use areas is that there is a lack of green space, and is there some way that we can kind of set some parameters for green space so that we're not just creating an urban jungle by implementing a regional mixed-use zoning?
Sure. So right now, we have a 15% open space minimum, and then also there's a 75% maximum lot coverage, which means that 25% of each individual lot can't be vertical.
And so with that, and this is something that I probably could look and find out, but you're here. When we look at open space, does that include the stormwater control measures as open space, or are those separate?
I don't know. That's a good question. I would think it depends upon the type of district.
You know, if you just have a stormwater control measure that you just make a little bit larger to conform to the 15%, it's already something that you're required to have
Sure.
anyway, and it's not really an open space.
Yeah. No, that's a good thing that we should establish, provide some more clarity on. What we do say in here is that of that 15%, half of it must be dedicated to public plaza or green space.
Okay, awesome, thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions, comments from the board? Hearing none, are there any comments or questions from the planning board?
Just one quick. So in the dimensional standards, the maximum front setback, you have 15 feet unless the front area is used for outdoor public seating plazas or green space, in which additional feet for these purposes may be granted. So can you explain that to me
Sure.
a little bit more? And what would quantify that granting of additional so if I'm going to put a couple park benches out there, can I get extra setback? Or you get what I'm saying?
I understand what you're saying. So the reason why
Seems
there's
vague to me, and you're saying we need a clear, concise language. So
the 15-foot maximum has to do with ensuring that in these districts, the buildings are built to the street. So there's not a parking lot between the building and the street. This doesn't mean that you can't have main entrances of the building that face a parking lot. Just the preference would be that it faces the side. So you're going down the road and you see the side of the grocery store, and then the front doesn't face the street, faces the side. That's a pedestrian realm best practice. It's been a best practice for 30 years. In terms of how do we define public seating plazas, open space, we have definitions in the UDO. We also have precedents in how we've enforced that in the past. It would be, I don't know, a rare occasion where a developer, I think, would try to nickel and dime through that. It's pretty clear, both in terms of the industry, in terms of what our UDO, how that works. So,
okay.
I have a question, two questions, actually. Can you, in looking at the permitted uses, I mean, this is a pretty wide-ranging list of uses. Who and how do we, regulate's not the right word, but choose which one of these uses is going to be able to go in there, and maybe which ones we don't want in
a
there?
good portion of that is a policy preference. So there may be things that staff has gone through that we have permitted or eliminated that the board may decide that they shouldn't be allowed. So part of it's a policy preference. One thing that I've done is kind of compare this to not only the industrial zone, like industrial uses that we have, but then also across a couple of those by right districts across the metro. And practice professional discretion to make sure I put something in front of you that I believe is approvable.
So that would be done at the initial application stage, or?
In terms of determining what uses will be in here? Yeah, so they'll have to say it, and that's normal now for
Okay.
anything else. Yeah, they have to. So if you're building a strip mall, for example, and there's a doctor's office and a grocery store in it, you have to tell us that. Yep.
The other question I had was, in reading through the stuff that we were sent online, it talked about on-street parking, bike lanes, pedestrian lanes. And I've been somewhere local in the triangle,
Sure.
and I can't place in my head exactly where, but there's on-street parking, and then there's like between the on-street parking and the sidewalk, there's, I guess, a bicycle lane, or maybe a pedestrian lane. But it just seems very tight, very congested, very confusing. And is that what's intended there, or is that what you're
One
referring
thing that
to?
we try to do to avoid that, because I agree, has been to not provide minimums or maximums on what the individual portions of that right-of-way should look like. You know, I'm a believer that we should set the template and have a lot of flexibility within that template to ensure the market can deliver. But I mean, we still need to set the template. And so you brought up a very good point where we specifically talk about if you're going to have a bike lane, it has to be between the cars and the pedestrian realm. And that's because the cars protect the bikers instead of the other way around, right? You don't want your bikers protecting our cars. And so that's why that's in there. But I think it's important to note that there's a variety of choices in there. It's not you have to build a bike lane, right? If you can build no bike lane, you just have to have sidewalks that meet a general standard for regional mixed use, which is described therein.
Okay, okay. No other questions from me.
Any other questions, comments from the board?
Thank you.
Thank you. Now I will open this up for a public hearing, for public comment. And is there anyone who wishes to speak in favor? State your name and address.
My name is Nicholas Walton. I live in 4014 Monsignor Drive. I unfortunately didn't prepare a speech as usual because I didn't realize this was happening until today. I mentally support this measure because for the past year I've been advocating for mixed-use development. Basically, the past year I've been basically advocating for mixed development, and this is basically the time to do it since the plan directors have been proposing an amendment to do this. So I immensely want this to be passed, so please do. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak in favor? Hearing none. Is there anyone who wishes to speak against? Hearing none. Is there anyone who wishes to speak neither for or against? Hearing none, I will now close the joint public hearing. And if any of the public has questions or pertaining to this, they can always contact the staff for updates. So at this time, we will refer this matter to the planning board for their recommendation. Do we have?
I think, are you seeking approval tonight, Matt, or what?
No.
Okay.
no.
Okay, gotcha.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
Make a motion to adjourn.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion? All in favor? Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.